Welcome to a special episode of Righteous Vote. I don't usually have a guest, but this is Pastor Josh Roberts. Him and I are pastors together at Sovereign Grace Community Church. And today I want to talk about something that I keep seeing all over the news. Nick Fuentes.
Yeah.
And let's just at the front, I want to say some of the things he says and does are crude.
Yeah, sure.
And sometimes abusive. And I was thinking about this earlier. One of the things that he does is, I noticed this particularly when he was saying things about women that are in politics.
Yeah.
That he did not recognize them or honor them as the weaker vessel.
Sure.
So there should be a certain amount of gentleness when it comes to the fairer sex.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that is a failing for him. But the thing that our culture would say was the big problem of the thing that our culture would say was the big problem with Nick Fuentes is that he is a racist.
Yeah.
So
or sexist, either way. I mean, the point is that he's too crude and not gentle to particular entire subgroups of people.
Protected groups.
Yeah, protected groups within our societal structure.
Yeah, and so we were having this big discussion the other day at church, and really I was doing my own, I was working it out on everyone else's ears. And I just wanted to address this. So you've heard a little bit of
I've
his
listened
stuff.
to some of his stuff.
Yeah. And Ben Shapiro recently had come out with this whole tirade, and you watched that as well.
Yeah.
And I think we both got the same impression. It was a hatchet job.
Yeah, and not a well done one even.
Yeah, so specifically, he clipped things out of context, and they were bad things, don't get me wrong. Yeah. And I've never seen Ben Shapiro not bleep cuss words before.
Mm-hmm.
And on this, he was careful to make sure that every clip had the F-bomb and everything else pop out as loud as it possibly could.
Yeah.
And this is the thing I want to talk about, and it affects the church too, and that's why I brought my pastor friend here. Of course, we're both pastors at the same church. But I think we're coming up on a time, especially over the next 3 years, where race and feminism and things are going to become the target of what the left is going to call extreme right people.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a good thing in a certain sense. Now, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. The problem with the rhetoric of the left from our perspective right now, I think, as conservatives would be that it's too broad. You know, if you say that there's a problem with black culture and you use all of the nuance that's available as people like Doug Wilson or want to do, you're still considered racist because you can't say that. And then you have someone like Nick Fuentes who comes out and is a little too crude and a little too hateful.
He uses like the N-word.
Yeah.
Or he uses the most extreme language he can.
Right.
And he doesn't nuance it at all to say, well, not all of them do that or whatever.
Or God forbid, even another Hitler type person rises to power. Like, it's the same term. Like, Hitler's a racist, Nick Fuentes is a racist, and Doug Wilson, because he recognizes a problem in black culture despite all of the nuance that he uses, still a racist. And so that's a little bit of the problem, I think, is that when they say far right and they say racist, it encapsulates people like you and me and Doug Wilson and all the way up to Hitler, and it's not specific.
Right. So if I mention the fact that 85% of African Americans, of black people in America, 85% voted for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
If I mention that and say, by and large, that black culture has a problem.
Yeah, like clearly the black church hasn't done a job with its saints because they're still voting for Democrat, kill babies, pro LGBTQ, and you could say that, and that immediately labels you as a racist because you're not allowed to comment on even obvious issues within another subgroup.
Yeah, and the Ogden Boys did that recently and got all kinds of things. And one of the problems I have with Doug Wilson's response to them is I don't think that he is. I think he's an artifact.
Yeah.
Of a different time, and he's not seeing the times that we're living in.
Yeah, well, unfortunately it's the way that it goes often. Like Doug Wilson is, and let's give credit where it's due, he is the shoulders of the giants, which we now stand. But the ideal is that we haven't won yet. You keep pushing the line of victory, and so he's comfortable with the victories that he's won, and now the new generation is rising up and pushing it a little bit further. And I'm particularly talking about the Ogden Boys more than Nick Fuentes there, but like and he's like, oh, like we've already got Venice, like why do we need to push on deeper into the European colonies? And that's a negative thing, I think. But to get back to your particular question on Nick Fuentes, like I think the question then is Nick Fuentes perfectly righteous, and also is he a good? So and I think those are two separate questions.
Yeah, and I think the first thing that, and the real crux of this conversation is about racism and whether or not racism, as it's called today, is even a sin.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I'm just going to use Hitler as an example because everybody understands who that is.
Yeah.
Hitler said the Jews were ruining his culture.
Right.
Okay? That was not wrong.
Sure.
He was not wrong when he said that. Where he was wrong was on the other things that he said, which were not true about them. It specifically put them on posters and propaganda and said loads of stuff which was well beyond what was actually true about the Jewish population.
And the development of some master race ideology and stuff all goes
right, and then
far.
the conceitedness of the other things that he was doing. So, but what I'm saying is, like, Jesus, when he talks to the scribes and Pharisees, he says, "You're snakes. You bar the kingdom of heaven. You're not saved, and no one is saved. No, you're not being saved, and no one's going to be saved in your ministry." Mm-hmm. Certainly, at that time in history, there were some scribes and Pharisees that were saved.
Sure.
Or would become saved through Christ's ministry. Yeah. Historically, Nicodemus, a Pharisee, the teacher of Israel, was historically known to become a Christian and be martyred, I think.
Paul, a Jew among Jews.
Yeah, Paul himself, right. So Jesus didn't have a hard time. He was under no constraints of targeting a subculture and calling them all out, even though not every single scribe and Pharisee, not every single one, fit within the description he was making. So did John the Baptist.
That's right.
Right? So when the Ogden Boys say the black culture has a problem and that if they came to their church, they would have to sort of renounce some of their blackness or the culture that they come from in order to become a member.
Right.
Well, that's totally reasonable.
Sure. I mean,
because you can't be if you fit into the demographic of African American, then you vote for Kamala Harris, for example.
Right. Well, or strongly identify with the tenets of violence and sexual affluency. You want to have a bunch of baby mamas and not take care of your children, and you want to pack a 9 on the street, and you want to front with good cred, and like that's
or
all.
You listen to rap music.
That's what rap music is. That's what culture is. It's not what being black is. But it is what the culture of the predominant black American culture is, and it's typified and lived out time and again. It's the reason why so prevalent statistically, murders and rapes and drug use and prison is filled with a particular subgroup of people is because that's the culture that they're ingrained in.
Yeah. So for one example that I do that is not race particularly,
Mm-hmm.
but what I'm saying is you can do this with race in a particular context.
Mm-hmm.
So when they say black culture, they're talking about America. They're talking about the subculture of America, of black people who dress a certain way, who talk a certain way, and vote a certain way.
Yeah.
And so, like, one thing that I do fairly frequently on even on Righteous Vote or even from the pulpit is to say that you can't. Yeah, there's no Christian Democrats.
Right.
There are none. There are no Christians who are Democrats, and you can nuance that if you want.
Sure.
You can say, well, of course, somebody could be a Democrat and newly converted and hasn't come out of it, blah, blah. But the fact is that the Democrat and Christian are a category, a logical category, and a cultural category which do not overlap.
Sure.
And so, like, anyone who is a Christian and a Democrat is living illogically.
Yeah.
And the same is true if I lived in a town 100 years ago and all the Irish people were drunk. And I said, all the Irish are drunk.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a sin.
Right.
And then I know there's like 5 or 6 Irishmen who don't drink every night. But I'm not... I just have the fact that I haven't taken the nuance to say 98.3% of Irishmen are drunkards.
Right.
The reason why you can call out a people group is because they police their own. They are a cultural unit, and they have federal headship, and they have a community. If you see a church where there's many adulterers that sit in the pews. And I'll do this too. I'll say, well, they're not a real church because many of them are sinners, or they're a sinning church.
Yeah.
And that is a definition. By definition, that would be true about a church because they're supposed to police their own, but they don't do it.
Yeah, and we see that type of sort of broad stroke use of terms sanctified in Scripture by apostles and Christ and God Himself. Even in the Old Testament, God says the Jews are a stiff-necked people.
That's right.
Now, when He said that, well, Moses and Joshua were serving Him faithfully.
Right.
But so it's not particular. It's broad stroke. We see. I think it was the Cretans, right?
That's right. In Titus.
Yeah, in Titus, again, broad strokes, and again, Jesus also in His ministry says, "You Pharisees," over and over, "You scribes."
And Peter goes in Acts, he says, "This is the Jesus you killed."
That's right.
And why? Because the Jews at that time in that place were a unit, and Jesus says He's hardened their eyes, and they have ears that don't hear. Yeah. Is that true for all of them? No. And what I'm saying is being able to make a generalization is an effective tool.
Right.
To call someone out of a subgroup which they identify with.
Yeah.
So if you said, like, if you're in a town where there's a bunch of skateboarders, and some skateboarders come into your church, maybe they even covered up their tattoos or whatever, and all the skateboarders in your town they do drugs,
right.
blah blah blah, and you say, and if you're a skateboarder in this town, you have something to repent from.
Yeah.
They mostly, for the most part, are going to be able to respond to that rebuke without all the nuance. You've gone right to where the problem is. They live a lifestyle that you can see is 85% hedonistic and all this kind of stuff, and you've been able to, with broad strokes, call them to righteousness right away.
Yeah.
Now, so being able to generalize in that way, even in regards to race, even if race is related or not, being able to generalize is an important tool that's used in Scripture a number of times. And I think the trick that the left has done is to take that tool away only from Christians.
Yeah, they don't mind being broad about conservatives or
MAGA
Christians
people,
or white or
yeah.
MAGA people who are deplorables. Like
Christians are
yeah.
so mean and hypocritical. MAGA are, they say MAGA and they tell you all the horrible things that these people are and all this kind of stuff. They do not mind painting a whole, who was it? Baskets of deplorables.
I think it was
Hillary Clinton. Yeah. Go ahead. But here's the thing, you're wrong. I mean, they're wrong about MAGA and they're wrong about baskets of deplorables.
Yep.
And it's important. They have that tool. My point is they have that tool, but we don't.
It's a strong and proper rhetorical tool that should belong in the arsenal of anybody in the terms of free speech. But they reserve it for themselves and then specifically say that when we use it, we're doing harm.
Right. And and I said Christian, but you could say white male Christian.
That's certainly, yeah.
But they themselves have pegged, they have tied white in with that.
Yeah.
They have. So I watched a documentary, and everybody should, on Prime, called Uncle Tom. Mm. And you have many black people who have picked up conservative ideas, and they get called Uncle Tom. Yeah. They become self-hating white black people and stuff. In other words, again, this has nothing, because these black people will criticize the black culture.
Yeah.
And when they do it, they get lumped in with, guess what? White Christians.
Yeah. Well, and so that again is just an evidence of where racism actually lies. If you went back a few generations within black culture, you would find you could go and watch but you could go and watch like the Friday movies and 90s black culture movies, and what you'll see is that within that cultural norm there is the matriarch figure who is going to be a grandmother or something. You've got Tyler Perry, Big Mama's House or whatever. Like, there's some black woman that's supposed to be mostly against black culture within their own culture because she's a good Christian church-going lady, and she doesn't want her daughters out horn around, and she don't want her sons involved in all that gang nonsense.
Right.
And she beats them when they get out of line. And that's grandma, and we all act good when we go over to grandma's house. Right. And then we get back out on the streets because, she's just grandma. But like that now is gone. The matriarch figure is of 2 generations ago has died, and what's left is I'm trying to use clean terms here. What's left is the more sinful individual,
the baby mama.
The baby mama.
Yeah,
that's a good term.
So, let's land this plane. So we've identified. So, what I'm saying is, first of all, I do believe that there is such a thing as racism. Yeah, which is to say, there's a certain way in which you can have so much hatred toward a particular way, a people group, that it's irrational, and you can't articulate why, or you're in the same position that Nazi Germany was, where they had been told lies and lies and lies for several years, right, to the point where they had an irrational hatred of a people group that was well above and beyond what would be normal if you were. So there's a certain form of racism. However, sure, I think that you should be able to express that, and I think you ought to express that, because the way that Hitler's Germany, if there was free speech in Germany, and obviously there wouldn't have been, if there was a rally to say the Jews aren't all that bad, right, they would get busted up. That's what should happen in a free society, though, is in Hitler's Germany, if they had free speech, you would have someone come out and say, no, here's the statistics and all this kind of stuff, right, and moderate that view. Yeah. And then the German people would not become so brainwashed, and Hitler would not have been able to get away with the atrocities he had. Yeah. And this is where I think Ben Shapiro is making a mistake. Mm-hmm. Because what you currently have is a person named Nick Fuentes, who is He does not. He is not gentle with women.
No.
And he is not. And he is crude, and he goes well over what is true and reasonable about the races that he discusses.
Right.
And he is mean and cruel.
Well, and clearly his big flaw, as you've said in previous discussions, is a denial of Holocaust stuff, which is
he denies the Holocaust.
He's got huge glaring flaws.
What he's doing is not rational.
Right.
And beyond that, you can see that there may be some there may be some. He has swallowed the whole cow.
Yeah.
He even though some of what he says is reasonable, he goes well above and beyond that to be inflammatory on purpose.
Yeah.
Which I'm not judging that. You can be inflammatory if you want to. But he is being crude.
Yeah.
And he is being disrespectful of women. Then a Christian ought to be respectful of women, even if they are
shock jocking or whatever.
Right. So if you're gonna say things that are strong, yes, sometimes you do, but you should not be crude as that's not a Christian thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what I'm saying is, everyone has a right to talk about people groups in a broad way. Yeah. And the sin of Nick Fuentes is that he talks about them in a broad way, but then he goes beyond that to be cruel, mean, and wrong. Yeah. In many ways. Right. So he's not measured in his racism. Yeah. And I use the word racism. I really don't think it's racist to be honest in a general sense about a particular people group. Right. So when I say there are no Christian Democrats, I mean that, and I don't think there's a sin in that. There's some nuance. I should be able to say that, and someone has a question. You mean no one that's ever a Democrat is a racist? Well, or I mean, is a Christian? Then I would say, well, maybe here's the corner case and blah blah blah. No. But it's not effective and the only people who have to do it are white Christians. Right. So, the idea of racism has been weaponized since before the Civil War. Yeah. And it got weaponized by Martin Luther King. He specifically overloaded towns so that they would bring out the hoses and spray the people down and bring out the attack dogs, because that's what all the towns did with any people group who rioted in the street. Right. So Marxism has been inflaming racism since before the Civil War. The Civil War was kicked off. The Marxists were talking to both sides of the Civil War to make race, because what does Marxism do? It's classism. Right. And with what the Marxists saw in the United States was that there was this seedbed for a certain type of classism, which was black versus white.
Yeah, and where we are today is a victory of that battle for the Marxists. Like they have won that particular battle, and hopefully they won the war. But as far as like how divided we are as a nation and the inability that you've been talking about to comment on anything outside of particular groups of subculture is a victory for the Marxist battle.
And so here I am to repudiate Nick Fuentes. He needs to take a careful look at the facts. Mm-hmm. Okay, the 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust is pretty close to right. And if you go and there are eyewitnesses, there's a number of things that you can know, Nick, that will let you know that is what it is. Secondarily, Hitler is not cool, right? He's a genocidal maniac. Yeah. He was unmeasured, and it resulted in the destruction of his people. Yeah. There's nothing cool about being a horrible leader who leads his own people into destruction. Right. Prudence is a virtue. Yeah. And so, and Nick Fuentes, you have got to, the Bible says that the women are the weaker vessels, and you're supposed to treat them with honor. And you're sinning every time you make a sweeping generalization about a certain type of women, and you use abusive language. Yeah. So, yes, you have many sins, Nick. You do. But I would say that Ben Shapiro is making a mistake. What he ought to do is carefully pick apart what Nick is doing and call out his actual immoralities and sins, instead of trying to make a. What he's doing is he's supporting a leftist idea of racism, and trying to use that cultural norm to tear down Nick, to silence Nick Fuentes from polite society.
Yeah.
But what really needs to happen is that polite society needs to clash with Nick.
That's right.
And moderate him.
Yeah.
Because if Nick would just simply cut the language, stop being crude and rude, if he would be more respectful to women, if he would be more honest about the racial things that he talks about, and actually use facts instead of going above and beyond and being hyperbolic every single time. Mm-hmm. You are not addressing an actual issue. All you're doing is you're making people you're doing the Hitler propaganda thing, which is you're saying things that are above and beyond true, and therefore it's fundamentally dishonest, and you're using deceit.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely right and true to call out Nick Fuentes for his myriad of shortcomings and sins, as you have. I also think, though, that it's important to give a space, as you've been sort of saying, for that type of thing to exist. In fact, I would love a space for I would love to have skinheads and KKK members openly talking about their beliefs, and then also openly
so that we could
clashing
that's right, yeah,
with better views. Because the Overton window is shifted only when those extreme views on both sides can come to the surface, and middle and extreme clash with one another, and a good actual formulated open discussion and exchange of ideals has occurred, so that everybody can come to a right place. And we've seen that, to use a weird example, like to me, Nick Fuentes is the flat earth of the conservative movement. Like he's too far in his questioning of everything, and he swallowed some things without putting much effort and thought process into the whole cow, as you said, which he swallowed. He looks up and he sees the sun and he sees the moon, and he says, wait a minute, this conflicts with my fourth grade understanding of the way that the day-night cycle works. The earth must be flat. And he's done that sort of thing with the Holocaust. But we've seen that with the flat earthers, they've yacked and yacked and yacked, and the result of that was that, like, some people have actually taken them to the poles and have taken them to outer space, and the result is they're like, wow, I was wrong. And that's what we need to occur with these far extreme views on both sides.
They say democracy dies in darkness. I think they said that. A society, instead of shutting Nick Fuentes off of YouTube, or kicking him off Twitter, and then you have Ben Shapiro coming out trying to get him deplatformed even more, or try to get polite people to stop listening to him. What needs to happen is that reasoned, intelligent people need to call him out, need to address his shortcomings, and then if Nick is in any way reasonable, he needs to moderate his own tone and speak to his own people and bring them to a much more moderate position. Yeah. In 3 years, we're going to vote on the next president. Yeah. And everyone's really worried about Nick Fuentes, and I'm not. But I'm only worried if we continue to do the Ben Shapiro thing, right? Where we just use a hatchet job. He's vile. He's cruel. He's mean. Those are all kind of true. Yeah. But they're true. But what the purpose of Ben Shapiro is to trigger in everybody a wrong way of thinking about someone you disagree with. Yeah. If you disagree with Nick Fuentes, go on and comment on his stuff and say, like, you got these facts wrong. This is wrong. You went too far with this. It always hurts my heart when you're so mean and disrespectful to women. And we need to push back on him so that he can become moderate, which means he has millions of people that listen to him now. Yeah. We need those people to become reasonable voters in the next 3 years. And the only way, and listen, if they watch Nick Fuentes and then they see a video that I make about Nick Fuentes, they can come on here and really consider my point of view. They're looking for this stuff. And Ben Shapiro, all he does is say, no, 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 no. And they see him do a hatchet job of Fuentes, which is only going to harden them in their position against Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
Fuentes says that Ben Shapiro is an Israel-only, America second pundit, basically.
Yeah, Zionist.
And then Ben Shapiro comes out with a hatchet job where he snips little pieces, and he is even unfair to a man who is cruel and mean and crude. Ben Shapiro comes. He has loads of material. He could be very reasoned. He could attack the positions, and people could legitimately see that Fuentes is not as good as they thought he was.
Yeah.
And yet he instead chooses to use a tool of the left to try to shut him down and make sure nobody ever listens to him on our side. And so everyone on Fuentes' side come watch this video, and they're only going to be reinforced in their mind that Ben Shapiro is just defending his own, and he's only a Jew first, America second, and that was exactly the wrong approach.
Yeah.
And I know why he's doing it. It's because Fuentes is going to be bigger than him, and he's trying to shut him down as much as he can.
Yeah.
But the truth is, if we care about the Republican side, we need to debate. We need to moderate. We need to rebuke those on our side in love, with the intention of them actually coming back away from their extreme views and taking a more moderate view.
Yeah, well, you can clip this if you want, but really also the right needs to be well served by moving just slightly to Fuentes' direction, which is to say they need to be. The reason that he is growing so much is because he's willing to say the things that no one else is willing to say for the most part, and he takes them too far, yes. But when you have either we say nothing or we say too much, you are much more likely to get young and fervent men to go to the too much side than the say nothing side.
Well, and I agree. So in 3 years, I hope to see that every Republican candidate says something like, and I almost want them to say it exactly like this: the black on black crime in the inner cities has gone too far, and it's time that America take responsibility for the crime that's in specific black communities.
Yeah.
I want to hear the candidates say that, and I want to hear them have a plan for how we can improve the race problems we have by putting resources like in police and stuff where they need to go so that we can lower the crime rate in places like that. And that's not going to happen if we keep everything the way it is.
Yeah.
If we have people who, and Charlie Kirk did this too. He talked about black crime. He talked about fatherlessness and all this kind of stuff. We need more of that.
Yeah.
And every time someone becomes a little bit too racist, we shut them down. That is a mistake, because by what standard are we doing that? It's by a leftist standard.
That's right.
Because you're white, you can't talk about black people.
Yeah. It's giving in again to the battleground victory of the Marxist. We're allowing the Marxist subdivision of race to make a class system which we're not allowed to operate outside of.
So just one upside.
Yeah.
Let's say that our politicians put some money into bolstering police force, but only in areas that are specifically high crime, which is going to be mostly black in big cities. That lowers the crime in the black community. That actually lowers their own self-perception as being criminal.
Yeah.
And makes them, takes away some of the criminal element. That would actually make white and black relations better.
Yeah.
Because you don't have girls getting stabbed to death in train cars.
Exactly. A little racism by the leftist definition would have helped. What was her name? Irinia, whatever, the young woman who was stabbed there, because she would have been a little more aware. She wouldn't have been on her phone. Yeah. She'd have either avoided that car, or she might not have been on her phone. and would have chose to sit at the back of the bus with no one behind her, and yeah, that's horrible, but that's also that's a byproduct of that culture. Yeah.
So that's a sad fact. My point is, where we're at in the Republican Party is no one would ever say that from the podium.
Exactly, and that's the problem.
But if Nick Fuentes gets 3 or 4 million Republicans that on his side, then our politicians are going to have to say things that are actually true.
That's right.
That would be good things for America and for the black community, and I'm just we're talking about black, but there's many other different subcultures and communities that need to be addressed and have problems that need to be fixed. Immigration is a big problem, and we think of that as being South American or Mexican or whatever. That's another subgroup you can't talk about.
That's right.
But if we moderate Nick Fuentes, if we call him out on his sins and he gets better at communicating, if he becomes less crude and disrespectful to women and disrespectful to people groups in a crude way, if he becomes more effective, then we will move the Republican Party into a better position to actually improve race relations and other kind of things through effective governance.
Well, and I said this to you in Messenger the other day, but it absolutely must occur, because there's a sort of old boomer style of thinking that's like, well, we don't want to engage with this individual because we'll give him a platform. If we take this nobody and we put him on CNN, suddenly he's exposed to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, now media has been decentralized. Nick Fuentes has more viewers than CNN could ever hope to have at this point. And so, he has a platform. And so the options are either we engage with him and we moderate both sides to an appropriate Overton shift to a middle ground, or we allow the echo chamber to continue to exist. And let's say that he is actually really morally corrupt and is truly extremely racist, which he may be.
That he's got all these listeners and viewers.
500,000 Republicans are going to become that.
And they're not going to be exposed to moderate positions, because since nobody will touch him with reasonable arguments, but only do like the Ben Shapiro thing where you just say he's vile and mean and stuff, which, he's vile and mean, but that's not where, it's not racism that his main problem is.
Yeah.
It's a general immorality and a crudeness that he has. Racism, there is such a thing as racism, but whatever the left has defined it is not a good definition.
Right.
All right, so we got to close up, but this has been a good talk.
Thanks for having me.
Fundamentally, I would say, in closing, we need to talk. We need to talk with the left, and we need to talk to the extreme right, and we need to try to talk reason into both of them.
Yeah.
We need the left to become more towards a biblical, Christian, Republican, conservative view.
Yep.
And we need people like Fuentes to become more biblical, more Christian, and more Republican in their views.
Yeah.
We need them to moderate the tone that they have where it's specifically sinful, and we need him to get his facts in line.